it's all just a game. And now you see, nothing's the same.
To see where this discussion takes us.
Yeah, me too.
And we are live, so welcome, and Happy New Year, everyone. This is W.I.L.D, the podcast. I'm Diana Kouprina, author of Borderline, a poetic memoir, and I'm joined today here with Pepper, who is just a creative ball of enthusiastic energy. She's a musician. You're a skater. I'm sorry. It's so many things and they're all flipping out. You know what? I'm going to do better and just have you introduce yourself. So Pepper, tell us a little bit about yourself and all your magnificent creativity.
I'm Pepper. I'm 36, almost 37, and I've been basically drawing since I was 2. My mom told me that I took my diaper off and smeared it on the wall and came running in the kitchen and said, "Mom, I made art," but in my little cute voice, and so that's kind of where it started. But I remember just drawing and tinkering and doing little things, and through that I've obviously, you wear many hats through that. I've surfed and skated and traveled with like teams, and then started doing my art about 15 years ago, kind of on my own. And just you know I traveled with a band actually for 2 years on the road, painted live with them and sold stuff. Like I found a brick outside one time, and this little lonely brick, and this lady came up and she's like, "Hey, can you paint a merman?" And I was like, "Sure." And I painted on the brick and sold it for $20. Just so like it's kind of you trash it, I'll cash it kind of thing. I don't really like to paint on canvases, so to say. I will if they're given to me, but I don't buy stuff to paint because there's so many things to paint. I was a vendor for 15 years, and then I started doing my own art walk. I started with about 15 vendors, and now it's grown. But they're hand selected, so you can only do so many, because then it starts getting into doubles, and I only like to have one of each. So yeah, it's created a lot of avenues. I was a drummer in my own band for a couple of years, and then of course, like raising kids and doing all that kind of stuff. It's kind of landed me where I'm at now. But I've worked so many different jobs. I mean, golf courses, car washes, business, just all
You're
kinds of
you're
different
you're a
stuff.
jack of all trades. You can do it all,
Yeah, yeah,
basically. That is
yeah. I
amazing.
actually, my uncle, he had a handyman business when I was a kid, and he would hire all these guys, and they would show up drunk or high, and he would have to, kick them out. And he's like, "Honey, I need you to come cut this line in for me." So from the time I was 15, I was cutting in lines at Steinmart dressing rooms. And then he started hiring me under the table, $10 an hour. And that was kind of like my first job, was like painting, big and like industrial size,
Hmm.
not just little houses. I mean, we did do houses too, but so yeah. And I've done that on my own. Even I've bid my own jobs and painted houses and businesses, in Flagler. So yeah, it's led to a lot of different roads. It wasn't just, I mean, I just was doing it for fun. I never even sold my stuff. I would just give it away. But
That's
eventually you kind of have to like, use the money. For a while I traded for anything. People had soaps or shampoos or clothes or, whatever, like stuff that I was going to buy anyways.
yeah.
And I love supporting the people. So trade and barter has been a huge thing too. And my prices are low. Like I don't charge a lot of money, for things. I price based on size.
Hmm.
So like smaller, that those little like records, I'll do smaller ones for, $10, and then the bigger ones, maybe for 20 or 30, and custom ones I'll do for like 40. But old like vinyl records, someone gave me a stack of them, and so I have those for life.
Yeah.
um but I'll paint on anything, like metal, wood, skateboards, surfboards, pretty much anything, anything that people are throwing away. And believe it or not, I've had people try to buy their own trash back. So one of the guys that I was in the band with, I won't name his name just in
Because you
case
made
he's
it so beautiful.
watching. So he didn't know what it was. Like he had this piece of it was like a piece of cut off like countertop that they did from like a job. And he's like, "Hey, I know you paint stuff like this. Do you want it?" And I was like, "Sure." And it kind of looked like sand, like the background was like kind of like granite, but not real granite. And so I took it home and painted it, and I posted it on Facebook about a month later. He was the first person to comment and say, "How much do you want for that?" And I was like, "Do you know what that is?" He's like, "What is it?" I'm like, "That's the trash you gave me a month ago. You're trying to buy your own trash back right now." So I love it because yeah, like I'll take something and then turn it into, this piece of art that
Mhm.
people would never even know that was being thrown away, you
Yeah,
know?
that is beautiful. That's such a beautiful
Yeah.
sentiment. Have your parents always inspired your creativity, your background, your family?
My dad, yes. My mom, she was actually kind of the opposite. She she did kick me out of the house when I was 12 years old, so I didn't live with her, but I did have a friend who happened to be like going down that street and saw a box of saw a bunch of boxes of stuff. So my mom had like thrown all of my stuff out to the side of the road and he grabbed one box. So I have one little tiny small little piece of like my childhood and like my drawings and my high school, middle school, more like middle school stuff.
Mhm.
I do have a little couple of things from high school, but yeah, I mean, she was not really like in my life a whole lot. My dad has fully supported. I mean, he has shown up to our art walks, just to come support and show love. I've gotten, my art on t-shirts and
Yeah.
sent them to him. I have art that I've given him from like there was this house over in Clearwater that was like abandoned on the beach, and we used
Mhm.
to like hang out at it, and just to get some shade. And I was kicking around in the dirt one time, and I kicked something metal, and I pulled it out, and it was this horse. And my dad loves horses, so I was like, "Oh, I got to paint this for my dad." And I painted it for him, and he still has it. He still has it. And he has a symbol that I've painted him. He has all the art that I've done for him.
That's
So,
that's amazing.
he's fully supportive. Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I have like mothers out there. I have so many. I got blessed with multiple mothers. Like figures that I have so many people that like they'll support it just because they love me and what I do, and I love that. Like I've really built a good community, especially within this art walk. I was like working as a waitress at this little restaurant, just trying to put Lucy through school. She's one my oldest daughter. She's going to be 7 next week. And uh I was like, it was $800 a month to put her through school. And I was like, I'm able to take care of my bills with like my income, but I can't afford that. And I really wanted her to go to this school. So I just went and got a little job. And so I was literally working just enough hours to like pay for the school. But, come to find out it was like I was actually paying to go to work instead of, paying for the school. I was paying to go to work. So, at the end of me working there, I was kind of like, "Hey, boss," which happened to be a friend of my dad's. And I said, "What do you think about doing an art walk here?" And he was like, and I said, "Listen, I'll do all the work and you just take all the money."
Mhm.
And he's like, "Okay." So, and that was it. Like it took off and we just did the one. I just thought it was going to be one. And then everybody's like, "Oh, when are you going to do another one?" So I was like, "Hey man, like we should do another one." And then it turned into a monthly thing. And the location has moved a couple of times, but I've always stayed on A1A. That's always my goal is to stay on A1A because I just love A1A. It's a road that I've grown up on. I drive down all the time. I go out of my way to drive on A1A versus like 95 US 1. So
For
it's
our
just
audience in Canada, can you be a little bit more
oh, okay. Okay, so
Um,
okay,
where
yeah.
like your location, kind of, where you grow up. And I know we're mentioning your dad a lot, and I just want to, just for anyone who doesn't know, obviously, you can, who he is and how his music possibly inspired your also musical talents.
Yeah, yeah. So I apologize because I did kind of forget, but my mom actually was born in Canada. And she does speak a little bit of French. That's the only thing I really know about her.
Mhm.
Um, so I kind of grew out of like knowing some of the words that I was taught. But so A1A is a coastal highway, and it's basically a road that runs from the top of Florida all the way down to the Keys, down to the tip of
Okay. Yeah.
Florida. And you can there's a lot of times where you kind of have to jump over, or there's a bridge, or there's sections that have gotten taken out by hurricanes and stuff. But yeah, it would take you hours to drive from one point to the other, but it's really cool. There's actually a ferry at one point that takes you over. And it's just very peaceful. You can almost smell the ocean when you're driving down this coastline, just imagine, like, windows down, wind blowing, it's 78 degrees. Like, that's pretty much like the atmosphere, that I've grown up in. Um, and so that's where the market kind of is stationed, and so I grew up in Jacksonville Beach, which is like the largest land wise city. And then that is where, my dad had his band,
Hmm.
which was Leonard Skinnerd.
Hmm.
And, they were kind of like all high school buddies. My dad was actually 10 years older than everybody else in the band, and he played the drums. So Bob Burns was the original drummer in the band, and Bob checked himself into a mental institution, and I think it was 73. And then that's when my dad joined them. And so he stayed with them up until the plane crash. But even after, like, just a few years before Bob had
Hmm.
passed away, which has been a few years now, but my dad had him come on and they did double drums,
That's
with Bob.
amazing. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
Bob was a really amazing guy, and he turned his life around, after his experience. But he was an incredible person, and my dad and him were very, very good friends. And I mean, my dad kind of is the last member, so to say, because everybody else has passed from either the plane crash, and
Hmm.
then car accidents, cancers, different things like that, age.
Yeah.
But and yet again, my dad is 10 years older than everybody, so he was always the one wearing the vegetarian shirt. He's still a vegetarian. He's like, he loves horses, he loves nature. He actually did a movie um that is called Street Survivors: The True Story of the Leonard Skinner Plane Crash. And what I really want people to take from that is that there are 26 perspectives of what happened that day, right? Of the people that were on the plane, there
Hmm.
were 26 different perspectives. Some of those perspectives did not make it, they passed away. So the people that remained, which were 20 people on that plane, they have completely different perspectives of what happened that day. So this story is solely based on what happened to my dad that day.
What
It
he
does not
experienced. Yeah.
portray what other people saw. Um, and yes, there are some aspects of the movie that are, for the movie, but the lot of the baseline of the story is based off of my dad's version of what happened and
Hmm.
what led up, a few days before the plane crash, and then what led up to the plane crash, and then days after, what happened after. So one of the things that was kind of funny that was in the movie that I don't want to tell like too much because
Yeah.
I really
Yeah.
want people
Yeah.
to go watch it,
Yeah.
and it's free on all of the platforms. Um, where it might be like 2.99 or 3.99. But there was a part like after the plane crash where they had all these investigators, and they were
Hmm.
like had everybody's stuff sprawled out on the table, and they had, brought my dad over, and they were like, "Okay, sir, uh, what is this?" And it was ginseng. Like, it was just
Mhm.
like an herbal
Yeah,
root
yeah.
extract, and they thought that it was drugs, so they thought they were going to get him for these drugs, and they were just like, "Okay, yeah, yeah, we'll test it, we'll test it to
Oh,
make sure."
wow.
And he was just
Yeah.
like, "Man, like I just went through a plane crash and lost my friends, and that's what you're, coming out
Mhm.
like." But that was the 70s, I get it. So it was just a different time, and actually somebody had just sent me a piece of the plane crash that was embedded into resin. This girl Heather Langley put it into resin, and it's a piece of the
Yeah,
actual
yeah.
plane crash with the tail number on it.
Oh, wow.
I know, I didn't even know that existed. I was just like, wow, I was estranged from my dad for many years. I was taken away from him when I was 3. My sister was 4 due to false allegations. And I'm not going to go too deep into that because of things that are kind of going on behind the
Yeah,
scene. So I don't want to like mess anything up with that. But what I can tell you is that, there is a lot of false allegations on my dad, and they're not true. So if you feel the need to go and look it up, whatever, but I'm here to just tell you that they were false allegations. They
yeah.
were not true. And I am working extremely hard to clear my dad's name because I'm a
And I'm
mother.
so
I have 2
sorry you went
daughters.
through
Like,
that. That is
I
that
would
is so
never put myself in a situation around somebody that's doing those kinds of things.
right.
I would, if anything, if it was true, I'd be in prison.
Right. And you're a mother.
For,
You it's a it's you know, you wouldn't be supporting. You wouldn't be.
No, absolutely not. No. Anybody who's met my dad and talked to him for 5 minutes, you can tell what kind of person he is, And something like that, from my experience of seeing and, firsthand, secondhand, third hand, people who have that kind of problem, they continue to do it
Oh,
over
yeah.
and over
It's a
and over.
continuous
Right.
cycle.
There
It
was a
doesn't just
one time.
end. It can progress, right? It can get worse. He could have gone on to your friends or something.
Yeah.
But then that fear, you would feel it in your body. You would feel it
I would know it as a
everywhere.
woman. I know it as
Um,
a woman. I've been
it's
around a lot of men, surfing, skating, music. I mean, I'm around men, you know what I mean? And I vibe well with everybody. Like I get along with everybody. I'm a live and let live. Like I have zero judgment. A lot of people who have, been addicted to drugs, they've even gotten by me because I didn't know. I just thought that was how they were, like I've married, like literally my whole life, I have like tried so hard to just stay away from drugs. I
mhm.
want nothing to do with it, you know, like not pot, whatever, like that's fine, it's medical, but just like hard drugs, and then turned around and ended up marrying someone who was addicted to crack, and I had zero idea. You know what I mean? So it was just like, whoa, like that's just how little I know about that stuff.
Mhm.
I don't even watch television, so it's not something, maybe I've seen it on TV. That's like my extent, um but yeah, it's just, I've been through I've been through a lot, a lot of things that would drive somebody to drink, which I'm allergic to alcohol. Thank the Lord, Um and to do drugs, like, or to be in jail,
Yeah.
I mean,
And I mean,
those are
you're continuing to go through a lot. Um,
yeah.
as a mother, you've experienced hardship and struggle, and you're just persevering, and that is so inspiring. And just how you continue to thrive and continue to create, where I don't even know how you find the time to do all of it. So, how do you find the time to do all of
I
it?
feel like time is so irrelevant, it's such an illusion, right? Like I get up and take my daughter to school and, I do my thing, but, I just I take the time when I have it, right, to do little things like just for this art walk, right? I sit and I do little things on my end too that are just totally free, and I just give myself 30 minutes a day to do that. But I try not to allot my time to certain things. Like I know I have to pick my daughter up and, take her to school. But I really try to keep like an open schedule because it seems like when I make plans, there's always something that's going to ruin those plans. But if I don't, I just kind of go like spontaneous
Mm-hmm.
is a good word. I'm very spontaneous. Like, oh, let's go on a trail today. But the one thing I try to make time for myself is, find one thing that makes you happy, right? If it's taking pictures, putting your hands in a garden, going on a run,
Mm-hmm.
talking to your dog, if it's one little simple thing, find it and do it every day, right?
Yeah.
Because then you have that little bit of joy in your day that nobody can take that away. You know what I mean? Nobody's going to give it to you unless you receive it, right? Like if I just close myself off because of my experience that I'm closing myself off now. Nobody has any entry to get to me, right? I'm just closed off. But if
Yes.
I leave myself open, then I let it comes in. It comes in waves. And I rely on people, on friends. Like I said, if you're going through something heavy and it may seem silly to somebody else, find one person that you trust and just tell them, just get it out. Because if
Mm-hmm.
you bottle it up, you know, it's eventually going to explode,
Yeah.
right? And then
Right.
that person that you explode on is like, "Whoa, what even happened?" And you're like, "Oh, I just bottled that stuff up for, however long."
Mm-hmm.
Right? Instead of
Yeah.
just being open. And but also there is a downside to that. You put yourself open like that, and then it does leave it open for people to be negative, and you know and that can make
Makes
it
you
hard.
vulnerable. There's vulnerability. The more open you
Yeah.
are, the more vulnerable you can be. And people can be judgmental, absolutely, and they can be negative. And, with the internet, I feel like it makes it easier. Just like there's so many positives that you can achieve with social media, just how you and I connected, just this podcast, all of it, all of the creations are possible because of the internet. But at the
Yeah.
same time, there's this downside um, where there's that negativity, and that can really tear you down. I know when I read negative comments about my work or my writing or any of that, it hurts me. It stings, and I obsess about it throughout the day. Like it's hard for me to let go. How do you battle with that? I know you.
Oh, I have a good one for that because, there was a time that I was working this restaurant, and it was like an upstairs, bar slash food. And the other girl that was supposed to show up, she didn't show up that day. And I ended up having like 17 tables, and I'm used to fast pace, so I had a good rhythm. They were kind of coming in big sections, where it was like, okay, I gotta whatever. So, anyways, there was this one guy who was by himself, old gentleman, glasses, reading the paper, really kind of just there for a while, taking his time. I didn't really bother him too much, but I was checking on him. And he had this plate pushed over to the side with like a few pieces of lettuce and a napkin.
Hmm.
So I just flew by, I grabbed the plate, threw it in the back. I was running back by, and he stopped me and he goes, "Ma'am, you should never take a plate before, or you should always ask before you take a plate if somebody's finished." And I sat for a minute, like I was almost frustrated because I was like, "Dude, do you not see me running around?" He didn't, because he was down here at the newspaper, right? He didn't have no idea what was going
Hmm.
on. And I didn't say anything. I listened to him for a minute, and I said, "Sir, you are absolutely right. And I am so sorry. That is a lesson learned." And I'm telling you, that has stuck with me like for a long time. Like the next restaurants that I worked at, people would have like empty plates, and I would be like, "Hey, are you all done with that?" And they would be like, "Yeah, yeah, you can take it." And I'm like, "Whew, you got no idea, okay?" Because you just you don't know what somebody's going through. You have no idea what somebody's experiencing, what they have going on in their brain. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? Um, so it kind of it reminded me like, hey, like slow it down, like communicate, don't just assume because you see something, you know. I mean, that was a huge lesson that has really stuck with me, for a long time. And it's how do you want to be remembered? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if you walk into a room and nobody's ever met you and you walk in screaming and yelling your head off, like people are going to be like, whoa, but if you walk in with a smile and you're happy, like people will give you that whoa, but it's like a different whoa. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Yeah.
And I want to treat people with, how I want to be treated, which is, with kindness and respect. And yeah, he may have been a little out of line at that moment, like bad timing, whatever.
Mhm.
But he was also right. And he kind of taught me a life lesson that I didn't even know I needed to be taught. Here I got 17 tables. I'm thinking, hey, I'm good. I'm doing it,
Yeah.
and he kind of put me in my place. And I did get in the weeds, because of it. But it kind of made me have that drive to be a better person and to, stop and think about things in a different light and not just in my light, but maybe somebody else's light,
Yeah.
Um, I had a very humbling experience about a year ago that, has really changed the way I see things in general. But, I was running this market. I had had a miscarriage, in that time, but
That
I
is
didn't
so
really tell
hard.
people that I was pregnant at the time just because, it was still kind of early. And then,
Mhm.
I had the miscarriage. And then I kind of told people after, but, life goes on. You know what I mean? There's a reason why we don't understand it at the time. And maybe through time you will understand or maybe you won't. But to my understanding, it's just that there was something not right,
Mhm.
and God is the candle maker, right? And he makes all these candles, and every
Yeah.
once in a while there's just a flame that's too big or a wick that's too small. And God's got to take
Yeah.
that candle back and
Yeah.
make it right and put it back out there, right? My uncle told me that when I was a kid. And I don't know what your beliefs are, and that's okay, whatever you want to call it. But that is the candle maker story. So shortly after, we did get pregnant again, so they
Mhm.
call that like a rainbow baby, right? Which is
I had an
something.
ectopic, and then a month later, I got pregnant with my daughter, my only
Oh
daughter.
wow.
Yeah, so she's
Now,
she's my little miracle baby. Yeah,
yeah,
so
I've
I
had one of
feel
those
you.
too.
I can relate everything to what you were saying. Just the miscarriage and just not even talking about it, really holding on to it, especially if you really wanted it, and that was something um that's just you were praying for, and then you get it. And I went in denial. I was like, oh, this pain, I'm gonna suck it up. It's gonna be something. So I walked around in denial. My stomach was extremely swollen. I looked 3 months pregnant when
Wow.
I was supposed to be like 2 weeks pregnant, right? And
Yeah.
so I just remember I climbed the stairs to my sister's bedroom and just was like, you have to drive me to the hospital. I can't do it. And yeah, it was an ectopic, but luckily, just I didn't have to have surgery. It didn't explode in me.
Oh
They
wow.
just monitored me, and they said if we are going to monitor, if it doesn't come out naturally, then yes, we will operate, but that will be the last resort.
Mm.
And said okay, and it came out naturally, and I was like, that's great. And then they said, well, if you try again, you'll most likely are going to have another ectopic. But they also said there's a 30% chance that I wouldn't have an ectopic, but it's the best time window for me to would have gotten pregnant, like right after that. So I took
Yeah.
my chances. I ran with it. I have a beautiful daughter. I'm very grateful. And after that,
Yay.
I called it quits, and I said, that's enough. That's enough. So I completely understand. So you got pregnant again after your
Yeah.
miscarriage, and
Yeah, and to go along with that too, I actually did have an ectopic, and my I didn't know I was pregnant actually. So when I went into the hospital, they were like, "Oh, you're pregnant." And I was like, "Oh, I didn't know." And then they came in 20 minutes later and they're like, "Yeah, we have to rush you into emergency surgery because it did erupt. It like
Oh,
blew up."
wow. Oh,
And so I actually lost one of my tubes. So I only had one tube. So the fact that I
wow.
did get pregnant twice was kind of like, crazy to me, right? I was just like,
Mhm,
that's so wild. So yeah, so I did end up getting pregnant again, and we was around like Mother's Day is when we found out, and then I think it was in August that we actually found out that it was a girl. And we were just so excited, and my husband's mom, his name is Edith, right?
mhm,
So I've never heard of this name, and she is just like, I cannot even explain the type of person she is other than just like, if there was a perfect human in this world, and I've met a lot of humans, I've never met anybody like Edith. So, of course, just, I have a Lucille. That's, goes back into my
mhm.
family's name from 1874 was the first Lucy in our family. So Lucille and Edith, I always, was like, well, those are really, both family names, and I love it, right? So we named her Edith, and I wasn't due until January 2025 is when
Mhm.
I was actually due. Which ironically, Lucille and Edith had the same due date. So I've had four pregnancies, and the other two were
Oh, wow.
completely different due dates. So I don't know how like that happened, but and Lucille is the 13th of January.
Mhm,
Um so Edith would have been due, January 25th, and um it was September 4th, 2024, where I was going in for like I was 19 weeks pregnant, and I was just
mhm,
going in for like that second ultrasound, because I really had like a good pregnancy, which I was of course worried because of the first time. So, I did things a little differently the second time. And I was a little bit more cautious and stuff. Um and everything was really normal in the pregnancy, and when I went in for the second ultrasound, um everything was great until the very end of it, like the last 5 minutes, she was like, "Oh, your cervix looks short." And I was like, "I don't know what that means." She's like, "Well, we're gonna have to admit you." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, like I have to go get my other daughter from school. It's early
mhm,
release." Like I wasn't even thinking that this was like an emergency. I was just like, I gotta get out of here. Like I'm not a hospital person, so I don't want to be stuck here. And
mhm.
they're like, "No, we have to admit you." So my husband goes to get Lucy. They come back, and they brought dinner, and we all had dinner together, and they were just kind of like monitoring me, and I just didn't really know like how long I was going to be there or anything. But that night I went to go lay down and to go to sleep. I'd had a really just kind of a stressful day, and I always have a hard time getting to sleep because like my mind's just going. So I put the TV on, which I don't normally do, and I started falling asleep, and I woke up thinking that I peed myself, right? And I've like never peed myself. So I was like, whoa, what was that? I'm like,
Mhm,
it's dark. I'm like trying to, so I called the nurse in. I was just like, I don't know what's going on. And she like tested it, and my water had broke. And so she's like, basically go to
yeah,
sleep, and
yeah, yeah.
we'll wake up in the morning and figure this out. And I was just like, okay. Like she put a pad down. It was just kind of like, in my mind I was just like thinking, okay, like my water just broke,
That means
like
you're in
that's,
labor, right?
yeah. I'm thinking like, okay, this baby's not going to make it. um and so yeah, they tested it. It was positive for my water had broke. I was reading online a little bit that it could reseal, but it's not usually likely unless it's like a really small tear, then it
Mhm,
can. But if it's a big tear, it can't. And so the doctors come in the next day. There's like a whole team of doctors surrounding me, and they're just like, baby is gonna be 24 to 48 hours, and then that's it. Baby's gonna come out. And I was just like, preparing myself for this, and they wanted me to induce, um and I was kind of like, in my mind I thought that this is what I had to do,
Hmm.
like there's no really other option. And my husband said, like, let's hear the heartbeat the next day. So, I waited till the next day and I heard the heartbeat at 140, and I was like, yeah, I don't think I want to induce, like I
Right.
hear a
Yeah.
heartbeat, like I'm just going to take my chances. What are the chances? What's the difference between baby coming out dead or alive? Just to be totally honest, like
Hmm.
blunt. And they said there's really no difference other than, you're at risk for infection. And I said, well, I will take my
Yeah.
chances. Um, and so we just kind of waited, and a week went by and there was still a heartbeat. And then 10 days goes by and there's still a heartbeat. And now I thought I was there, like I thought I would like had to be there, right? I didn't think that I could like leave and go
Hmm.
anywhere, go
Right.
home or
Yeah.
go to
No,
another
if
hospital.
I were you, I would be imagining myself being completely bedridden in a hospital and being like, just make
Yeah,
it
like I'm
work.
not going
Right.
anywhere until they tell me I can go somewhere. But I heard this commotion going on. I had been there for, I don't know, like almost 2 weeks, it seemed like. And I hear all this commotion and this girl's screaming and yelling. And then the next thing I know, like they're talking about an AMA. So I'm like, what's an AMA? It's, leading against medical advice. So
Hmm.
I was like thinking about it and I was like, man, I'm talking to my friend. She called Winnie Palmer the next day and they're like, Winnie Palmer. So the hospital that I was at, they could only save babies at like 25 weeks if they were
Hmm.
born, because they just don't have the equipment.
Yeah.
And they did mention Winnie Palmer, but I was like, that's in Orlando. Like, I'm good on all that. It's like over an hour away. Like, I'm not going there. But Winnie Palmer is, known to be able to save babies at 22 weeks, right? And I didn't even know like babies could be saved at this little. I'm thinking if we're in the wild, like, I mean, she's not going to make it, if
Mhm.
she's born that early. But I didn't know when she was going to be born. I just was kind of like holding on. So I AMA'd. I left that hospital and they were just like, "Okay." And I asked them a million times, is there a little tiny smidge of a percent of 1% that this baby would live? And they said
Mhm.
no. Now, we have a mutual friend who I asked another friend who was in the medical field, and I asked her, I said, "Is there any percentage that this baby would live?" And she said, "No." I looked online, everything said no. So I was just thinking, okay, like there's just no way, everybody's saying no. I don't see it.
Were you
My
preparing
friend,
for kind of goodbye? If this baby's born, you're just gonna say goodbye and
yeah,
let it
I was just gonna hold this
just,
baby and
yeah.
as long as I could, and
Mhm.
just do all the things you can do and just, say my goodbyes and kind of come to the terms of reality. And this would be the third child that that I've lost. It's like, how like you said, you're done at a certain point,
Yeah.
and so I had kind of given up, you know what I mean? I won't lie. I'd given
Mhm.
up. And but then they when I heard the heartbeat the next day, that was when I felt like this electrical feeling in my heart. And it was like, don't give up. You know what I mean? And I just will not forget that feeling. Like my whole body got like electrocuted when I heard that heartbeat at
Mhm.
140. Like I was just kind of like, whoa, I was not expecting to hear a heartbeat. You know what I mean? So my friend calls Winnie Palmer. They're like, "Yeah, we'll evaluate but I wasn't 22 weeks yet." So, I think I was 21 weeks. I think I was 21 weeks or something, and they they did see me that day. They did admit me into Winnie Palmer, but
Mhm.
they said, "You're only 21 weeks and so many days that, if the baby's born right now, there's nothing we can do. So you can just go home and hold your breath, or you can stay here. Well, I am not staying at a hospital any longer. I'm going home with my family. So that's what we did. I went home. I held my breath for 5 days. So they said,
Mhm.
come back in 5 days. So I went back in 5 days and they gave me a shot and then gave me another shot the next day. So that way, this was put me 2 days before viability,
Mhm.
meaning that they could save her life at 22
Yeah.
weeks. And so, like, if she was born any earlier, they couldn't have saved her, right? So they give me the shot, they give me the next shot, and on September 21st of 2024, little E that decided that she was going to come early. And I went into labor. It was like a totally natural birth. I didn't have to get like as dilated, I
Mhm.
guess,
Yeah.
because she
Yeah.
was so
So
small.
small.
Um, but still at this moment, I still thought like, okay, she's gonna be born, but that's gonna be it. And she was born, and I saw her a little blip of her as they ran her away in this bag. And they kind of cleaned me up, and it was a couple hours later that I got to see her. And me and my husband, we just lost it. I mean, you see this little tiny thing. It's like, I think I have a picture. Hold on, it fell. This was um I want to say this was like,
Oh
I don't know if you
wow,
can
she
see
looks
that.
so tiny. Oh my
She
goodness.
was itty bitty.
Diddy, yeah.
So she actually weighed 1 pound and
Wow.
1 ounce, which is 400, and she was 480 grams,
Was she the
which
size of like
400,
your palm? Maybe a little bit bigger?
she was 10.5 inches long. So hold on, because I have a tape measure right here. So let me see. That is how long she was.
That is tiny, yeah.
And I mean, yeah, like that's the size of my arm. But no, she was tiny. She was so little and so translucent. I mean, you could see right through her skin, you know. And then I don't know if you could see this, but um
Yeah.
this
The footprint. Yes, the footprint.
so yeah, that I'm trying to show you this one. So the colorful one,
Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. Is that her
that one
footprint
is
now?
so that is Lucille's footprint
Oh,
at
okay.
birth. And she was 6 pounds, 19 inches long. So she was
Mhm.
like a normal size baby. And then the little black foot was Edith's.
Oh wow.
And that is actual size. So literally like the size of I mean, I think it's the size of like a quarter.
That is
I mean, she
tiny.
was so tiny. We just thought, I swear it was like every day we just kept thinking like this is it,
Mhm.
like she's not gonna make it. At a week old, her intestines ruptured. So we just thought again, I mean, she was so, so sick. She was so ill. Um, and she fought through pretty much everything. She had hydrocephalus, so she got a shunt. She has a G tube. Um, we had to fight for a trach. There was a point where at 6 months old, they just were like, there's really nothing more that we can do. They wouldn't do the trach because she couldn't regulate her body temperature. And we were all just kind of waiting, to be honest. I mean, everybody was just kind of like, okay, like we're going to wait. And I asked the doctors, like, what is the plan? And they just said, we're just basically waiting for her to pass.
Whenever she just lets
Um,
go, basically, just
Pretty much, until she just kind of her little body gives out. But it never did. That's the crazy part, right? Um, so after a month or two, she starts regulating her body temperature. They're like, okay, we'll do the trach. So 2 days before her first birthday, she ended up getting the trach, which is a
How old
little
is she now?
breathing tube. So she's now 15 months old.
Wow.
Yeah. And she's huge. She's 24 pounds. I think she was 23 inches long. So like her foot now is about the size of Lucy's at birth.
Mm-hmm.
To just kind of like give a
Yeah.
comparison, it took her 15 months to get the same size as Lucy's foot at birth. But so she was born at 22 weeks and 0 days. Because of that, there's this weird thing. So if anybody has lived the NICU life of babies being born early, then you kind of understand this. But as someone who did not live that life, I did not understand their time frame. So Edith was born 4 months early.
Mm-hmm.
So according to the hospital, they go off of the January 25th as her birthday.
Oh, okay. So it
So right
still
now,
counts. So even though she was born in September, and unfortunately we're gonna cut off with that, and I hope we do part two because I wanna really bring forward how you've been
yeah,
surviving and how you've made it. And congratulations. I mean, she has a will
yeah,
to live, and
she
that's
sure
beautiful.
does.
And um, we will end it on that, I think. And I will definitely would love to have you back. We'll do something. We'll plan for March, hopefully, and have you back, and we can um, talk about what you've been through and just the overall experience. And again, we'll circle back to how you keep creating and how you keep having this wonderful energy. And you've been through so much. So I so appreciate all your inspiration that you shared with us.
Yeah,
And
thanks for having me.
I can't wait to really dive into the baby Edith story. So I can't wait to have you back on. Thank you so much for being here. Everyone who
Yeah,
was
thank
listening,
you.
thank you for tuning in. This was Wild the podcast. We are live on Just TV, Just FM, Jeff CA, NCG Television Network, Meta TV, Roku 24/7. I think I got all of those. Again, thank you for tuning in, everyone. Have a great night. Pepper, I'm just hugging you. You're amazing. And I can't wait to continue further conversations. Best of luck. Baby Edith is in my prayers. Um, Definitely hugging you, sending you kisses.
Yeah,
You
thank
know,
you
you're
so
just
much.